So this quiz was about checking your knowledge of adding and subtracting fractions with different denominators. So we saw in the lesson that in order to add two fractions together, you can only add them if the bottom numbers of your fractions are the same. And if they're not the same, then you need to use equivalent fractions to get them to be the same, and then you can add the fractions together. So the process for doing that is that you look at your denominators, which in this case are 3 and 5. You then want to be changing those two fractions into an equivalent fraction that's got the same bottom number. So the lowest common multiple of 3 and 5 means that I'm going to look at my 5 times table and my 3 times table, and I keep writing them down until I find the first number that is in both times tables, and hopefully you can see that that would mean that was 15. That's the first number that belongs to both those times tables. So what that tells you is you're going to make your bottom numbers in both fractions to be 15. So you are changing 1/3 into 15ths, and remember that that means that you've had to multiply to do that. So you'll see that that would be multiplying by 5, and if you multiply the bottom number of your fraction by 5, you will also need to multiply the top number by 5. Previously you would have had this written out like this type of thing, where you had 1/3 equals how many 15ths, and you would do that. So you can still write them out separately to the side if you prefer, or you can then look at this and see, go down the way in your working rather than across your page. So 2/5, if we're trying to change that into 15ths, we're changing 5 into 15 by multiplying by 3. So we need to do the same to the 2 on the top, so that gives us 6 15ths. Once you've got the bottom numbers to be the same, you know your answer is going to be over 15. It is simply about adding those top numbers together, which in this case is the 5 and the 6. So your final answer is 11 over 15. It is not essential to write that last line of working in. You can miss that bit out, but it's just a reminder that you don't add the 15s together. It's only the 5 and the 6. Right, remember you add the top numbers only. So it is about using your times tables, but you need to recognise that the bottom numbers of your fractions must be the same. So your answer here should have been, for question 1, should have been 11 over 15, which was answer D. In the second one, we were adding 9/10 and 3 over 4. So here you needed to look at your 10 times table and your 4 times table, and the first number that's in both those times tables, right, would be 20. So that tells you your lowest common multiple of 4 and 10 is going to be 20. So we're going to change the fractions, make the bottom number 20 in each of them. And if we're doing that, remember what you're looking for is what you're doing to the 10 to change it into 20. You are timesing by 2. That means that you need to multiply the 9 by 2 as well, so you get 18 in the top of that fraction. On the other side, you are multiplying by 5 to change that 4 into 20, so you need to do the same thing with the 3, which means you get 15 on the top. So what you're saying is that 9/10 is the same fraction as 18 over 20. 3/4 is the same fraction as 15 over 20. When they are written like that, all you're basically going to do is add the 18 and the 15, and that would give you 33 over 20. And you've not had to make it into a mixed number. If you check on the answer sheet for the ABCD, you'll see they're all written in fraction form, and in fact that answer of 33 over 20 was answer A. For question 3, you're looking at 5/8 take away a fifth, so you needed to come up with the lowest common multiple for 5 and 8. So going through your 8 times table till you come to the first number that is also in the 5 times table, and that would be 40. So that tells you that's what the bottom of your fraction needs to be. So you need to make them equivalent fractions with a 40 on the bottom. If you're changing the bottom number of your fraction, you also need to change the top number here. To change 8 into 40, you have multiplied by 5. So you would get 25 on the top there. On this side, you've times by 8, which means you would get 8 on the top of that. You are then left with doing 25 take away 8 on the top of that fraction with just the 40 on the bottom. So that becomes 17 over 40 for that one. So you're looking for your answer to have been answer B. For question 4, you need to read the instructions here. It says the fractions in the two circles below add to give the fraction in the circle above. What should you put where the question mark is? So the question mark would be your answer. So you're looking to add these two fractions together. So you needed to look at the lowest common multiple of 10 and 8. Notice when I'm finding the LCM, I'm always starting with the bigger number and going through its times tables till I come to one that I recognise as being in the 8 times table as well. So in this case that would be 40, that would be your lowest common multiple. So you change your fractions to be both out of 40, and in each case you're going to be times it on this side, times in by 5, and on this side you're times in by 4. That means your two numbers on the top there, you're going to have 5 times 7 would be 35. On this one you would have 4 times 1 be 4. That give you an answer of 39 out of 40. You're simply adding the two top numbers, and that would be answer C. For question 5, is again another one where you need to actually read the question. So it's telling you 2/5 of the pupils chose fish fingers and 1/3 of them chose burgers. So if we add these two amounts together, now actually this was the same sum that you did in question 1. Don't know if you picked up, those of you that had done this quiz, if you picked up on that, you've already done the sum. So lowest common multiple of 3 and 5, if you remember, we said was 15. So we'll just go down through this again. That would mean that we needed to write in here, right, we were timesing by 3 top and bottom, which means that we would have had 6 over 15. So 2/5 is the same fraction, 6/15. On this side you're timesing by 5, so you would have 5 on the top there, and if you then add those two things together you get 11/15. Now that's how many pupils chose fish fingers and burgers. So what you want to know is the rest chose chicken nuggets. So how many was that? Well, if you think about the fact that the population of pupils, the whole school represents one whole, because we're working with 15ths as our fraction, we can write that whole number as being 15 out of 15. So the fraction that chose chicken nuggets would be how many out of the one whole piece is left. So 15/15ths take away 11/15ths means that you would have been looking for 4/15ths as your answer. So if you try and remember, right, that would have been answer D. If you try to remember that if you're dealing with a fraction and you've got a sample or a population of something, it's always taken to be one whole. Remember that a whole number can always be written as a top-heavy fraction, like this, as long as the number on the top and the bottom are the same. So whatever fraction you're dealing in, So if this had been 8, you could have written it as 8 over 8 or whatever. So look through those 5 questions, look for where you've made your errors, where you need to improve, and make little notes for yourself so you can at least have copied out the right answer if you have made errors.